Welcome to The Explainer. I am so glad you're here with us today. We're unpacking a conflict that is literally shifting the tectonic plates of global geopolitics, economics, and human rights. We are tracking the incredibly complex web of the US-Israel-Iran war, and honestly, we've got a ton of fascinating, fast-moving source material to break down. My goal here is to make sense of this massive geopolitical puzzle, piece by piece, right on the screen so you can clearly see exactly how everything connects. Let's get right to it.
We are currently on day 59, 2 whole months into a multi-front conflict that really just shows exactly how interconnected our modern world is. I mean, what happens in a negotiation room in Pakistan or up in the airspace above Lebanon creates this immediate ripple effect that reaches all the way to global energy markets and international diplomatic back channels. It's incredibly complex, but we're going to map out the whole shebang together.
Okay, let's dive into this. To make sense of the chaos, we're breaking this down into 4 key parts. First, the Russia-Iran strategic pivot. Second, the choke point at the Strait of Hormuz. Third, the fragile Lebanon ceasefire. And finally, the death row dispute.
Section 1. The Russia-Iran strategic pivot involving Moscow, Tehran, and stalled talks. So, the massive diplomatic news today is that peace negotiations have severely stalled. Iranian officials were in Pakistan really aiming to negotiate a way to end the war on their terms, but progress completely hit a wall. Former U.S. President Donald Trump actually canceled a planned trip by U.S. officials to Pakistan over the weekend, stating frankly that it would just be wasting too much time. And you know what happened immediately following that breakdown? Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Archi, traveled straight to Russia. He blamed the United States for the failure of those peace talks in Pakistan, which totally sets the stage for a major pivot toward Moscow.
Now, one of the absolutely biggest sticking points right now, the thing getting to the very core of the standoff, is 60% enriched uranium. The US strictly insists that this highly enriched nuclear material has got to be sent out of Iran. Iran, on the flip side, says it will never allow that to happen. But here is where Russia comes in. A potential middle ground being discussed right now is having that material stored in Russia. It's a pretty classic diplomatic maneuver, right? It allows Russia to step in as a vital intermediary to kind of diffuse those regional tensions. But the crucial point here is understanding what each side actually wants from this alliance. On one hand, Iran is seeking concrete backing. We're talking intelligence, support in the UN Security Council, and assistance preparing for a potential resumption of war. But Russia's priorities? They're vastly different. Their main focus remains the war in Ukraine. Plus, Moscow highly values its relationship with President Trump and wants to use this crisis to act as an intermediary, basically asserting itself as a superpower broker. Critically, Russia has never promised to enter into a direct war with the US or anyone else on Iran's behalf. So it's very much a strategic marriage of convenience, but with some very real limits.
Moving on to Section 2, choke point at the Strait of Hormuz, looking at the economic front.
The head of the UN's International Maritime Organization issued a very strong statement on this. He stated clearly, the freedom of navigation is not negotiable. No country has the right to obstruct the traffic. He really emphasized that this isn't just a polite suggestion, it's international customary law. You literally cannot simply tax or block international navigation through vital straits. But as you'll see, despite this clear international law, the reality on the water right now is a completely different story. And here's why this matters to you for sure, no matter where you live. With the warring sides so far apart, the Strait of Hormuz is at a near standstill. Over the weekend, there was a brief window where the route appeared to reopen, and a convoy attempted to transit. Well, what happened? 2 ships were detained by Iran. Now crews are just being held, waiting in the Gulf, and the UN is demanding their immediate release. As a direct result of this massive supply chain choke point, global oil prices have resumed their upward march. So that diplomatic stall we talked about, it directly hits the global economy.
All right, Section 3, the fragile Lebanon ceasefire and the deteriorating ground reality. That ceasefire agreed upon earlier this month, it is on the verge of total collapse. In fact, we just saw the deadliest day since the truce actually began. It's so important to look at both sides impartially here. Israel accuses Hezbollah of a drone attack that killed an IDF soldier, and they assert the absolute need to accelerate attacks to protect their northern border. Meanwhile, Hezbollah points out that Israeli airstrikes hitting the Bekaa region and the south killed 14 people in Lebanon on Sunday alone. Because of that, they're claiming the right to retaliate. To make matters even more complicated, there's the fact that Israeli troops are still on the ground in the south. And we absolutely cannot lose sight of the human cost behind all these military maneuvers. 1 million. That is the massive number of Lebanese civilians who have been forced to flee their towns and villages. They're desperate for this ceasefire to hold just so they can return home. But the really heartbreaking reality is that many of those villages on the borderline have entirely vanished, just completely demolished during the conflict.
That brings us to Section 4, the death row dispute, looking at international claims versus internal realities. So recently, a photograph circulated online showing 8 Iranian women who were allegedly on death row, accused of crimes linked to those nationwide protests back in January. Former US President Donald Trump posted on his Truth Social platform asking Iran to pardon them, and now he claims that his direct intervention has helped spare these 8 women from execution.
So, we have a very direct clash of narratives here. Trump claims his social media intervention saved these 8 women from the death penalty. But Iran's judiciary, they categorically reject this claim. They insist that none of these women were currently facing execution, and they're accusing the former president of spreading fake reports.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why we need independent verification when these big international claims clash. The BBC actually spoke with the director of the Oslo-based organization Iran Human Rights to get the verified facts on the ground regarding 5 of these specific women, and here is what they found. 2 of the women were actually released on bail last month. However, 2 others are facing possible death sentences, and one woman, Vida Himati, who was arrested in January during the protests, is facing execution. Furthermore, the Iranian judiciary itself confirmed that at least 5 executions did take place just over the past week, mostly of individuals accused of spying for Israel.
To put this specific dispute into perspective, it happens against a much broader, deeply sobering backdrop. According to human rights groups, at least 1,639 Iranians were executed last year alone. Let that sink in. That is the highest recorded number of executions in the country since 1989. It is a really stark reminder of the intense internal dynamics happening within Iran at the exact same time it's trying to navigate this massive external war.
Which brings us to the ultimate question we have to ask as we look at the whole board today. We've seen peace talks completely stall in Pakistan. We've seen the Lebanon ceasefire cracking under the immense weight of airstrikes and drone attacks. We've seen global supply chains literally choking at the Strait of Hormuz. So with all these vital systems flashing red, can diplomacy actually outpace the escalation? That is the major thread we will continue to pull on as this conflict evolves. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack all of this. Stay curious, stay informed, and I'll catch you in the next Explainer.